In Deuteronomy chapter 3, Moses reminds us of a very important principle about rest and how it is that we find it. He does that as he's talking about the Israelites as they were about to enter into the promised land, when he told them that the fighting men would go first. They would go into the promised land and they would go first, and the wives and the children and the families, they would stay behind. And he said, only after the Lord has given them rest from their enemies, only after the Lord had given the fighting men rest from the enemies, then everybody else would follow and they would be able to join them. But the principle that he emphasized there was that it's the Lord who gives rest. Rest comes from the Lord. Now, there are lots of other ways we try to find rest. Rest for our minds, rest for our souls, rest for our conscience, rest for our bodies. But just think about somebody at the end of the day who's trying to fall asleep. They might have an easier time falling asleep if they got everything on their list done that day. And they feel good and there's nothing else to do, and so they can rest well that night. Or they rest well if nobody was upset at them that day, if they didn't disappoint anyone. Or they rest well if they feel good about themselves at the end of the day if enough people complimented them or showed appreciation for them. They rest well at the end of the day if they don't feel guilty about anything. And those are not bad things to feel or accomplish. They're actually pretty good, but I think you probably know from experience that any rest that comes from those things is pretty short-lived, because the to-do list starts all over again the next day. There are enough people who have expectations of you and your work that it's impossible to please everyone. And then, of course, you live with a conscience that knows it's impossible to always be happy with yourself. And so the rest that those things give, it's inconsistent at best. At the very least, it's not a very good thing to base your entire life on, which is why the principle of it is the Lord who gives rest is so important to remember. It's what Jesus emphasized when he said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." I will give you rest, he promised. And how do you know? Because he came to us even before we asked him to. He came into this world as a little baby, ready to save the world, before we even knew we needed him to. He came without us asking. He came simply because he looked at you and he saw that sometimes you need rest. You need to rest in the assurance that God is with you. You need to rest in the assurance that Christmas doesn't depend on your faithfulness. It depends entirely on God's. You need to rest in the assurance that little baby did grow up, and he did die on a cross as a sacrifice for our sins. And you are forgiven of everything. He knew that you would need to rest in the assurance that this world is not going to get the best of you. He's already prepared the place of perfection of heaven. He came because he knew that we would need to find rest, and rest that can only come from him, from the one who doesn't even hold our failures to provide rest for ourselves against us. He simply comes. He came in Bethlehem. He came to the cross. He comes to us again and again in his word. And one day he will come again to give us the best rest of all by taking us home. All of this so that you could rest well tonight, my friends. Because we have a Lord who knows how to give us rest.